What's up, guys? It's Tom Clark over at TFCIV MMA, and as you can see, we're joined with a pretty awesome guest today. We have Karl Williams, UFC heavyweight. How we doing, Karl?
Doing well. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Yes,
My
sir.
pleasure, man. My pleasure. So it's been quite the week for you. We just got news about an hour ago that you'll be fighting Chase Sherman at UFC 287. These short notice bouts are becoming kind of regular for you, but can you kind of run us through how this all happened?
I was leaving practice on Thursday, and I was actually so after my fight, I took like a week off, spent time with the family, and I went back to help Chris Barnett train for this fight. And Thursday, I'm driving home, and I get a call from one of the coaches, and it's like, we're waiting on the doctor to see what's going on. But hey, if depending on what the doctor say, if you want to, we could try to plug you into it. And that's just coaches talking, you know what I mean? That's nothing to do with the UFC. So I'm like, well, you never want to hear that because it's so much like he's been training so hard for this fight and getting ready for it. And he felt good all week, and then that day he went and the doctor, then said what they said. So um yeah, so then I'm going through the whole process of like calling my management, calling my coaches, trying to figure out like what do they think about it, and before the UFC, probably takes it to somebody else or whatever. I'm like, look, let me call, hey, you guys, let's get ahead of this, let's get the ball rolling, you know. And yeah, but short notice fights, like I don't think people realize when I keep saying like I love to fight. Like I train, like I took a week off and I went back training. It wasn't how I wanted to, but because I live in South Carolina and the gym is in Georgia, so I'm not able to like train every day like I want to. But if I lived in Georgia, I'll train the week right after the fight, and like I did some stuff at the house, but that grappling, that boxing, stuff like that, I would if I'm in Georgia, I'm back. I'm right back into training. That's where I find my peace. I find my happiness, my joy, aside from the family. But if it's something else outside from family, that's my humble abode.
Yeah, man, I
Yes,
get you. And
sir.
the proof is in the pudding with you loving to fight. This will be your fifth fight in the calendar year, I believe. Since last June, this will be your fifth fight when I was checking things out. And you were on Dana White Contender Series short notice. You did have a full camp for your last fight, but I'm excited to
Yeah,
see you in there. Chase Sherman's a guy where he's fought a lot of great talent at the heavyweight division. He's fought Alexander Romanov. He just fought Waldo Cortez Acosta, who has a big fight coming
yeah.
up. So a win over him really, really gets your name out there because he is a name a lot of people know. You've really leaned on your wrestling so far on the Contender Series and in your first fight. I mean, you out wrestled a D1 wrestler at the Contender Series and you were coming up to heavyweight. So is that your plan in this fight to kind of implement the wrestling, or how do you want to get it done, man?
Honestly, it's part of the game or part of my skill set, but it's never like we're not going to stand up and strike with you. We're not going to do this. We're not going to do that. We're going to like focus on even for the last fight. Most of the fight, we're worrying about like okay, counter striking. If we get to the clinch, this is what we do. But it wasn't like don't think about like striking. We're going to just go in there, throw a few some things and take them down. Like Coach Danny, who was in my corner, like we work a lot of kickboxing and boxing, with him, and also working on just like clinch stuff. But I was at Extreme for most of the camp, and even at my home gym, ATT, like we train everything. So, and it all depends on how I feel on the striking and what you give me, So it like I've had fights where I stood up before the Contender Series fight. I stood up, strike with a guy. At the end, he's a boxer. He tried to grab me. So I was like, all right, let's just take him down and finish the fight, which I did. But for the most of the fight, I just kept my range, and did my thing. So it's always going to be there. Like you always going to have to worry about it. And if you come in a certain range, we're gonna wrestle. I'm originally a wrestler, so if you come in a certain thing, yeah, we're gonna wrestle. I'm not gonna sit there. I'm not a boxer. I tried doing some round with Curtis. He's originally a boxer. Man, he's like in there on you. I'm like, you want to stand up? I was like, I'm gonna try to take you down, but yeah, boxers are different. So they're comfortable standing there. Wrestlers, I'm like, well for me, I'm gonna try to grab you, take you down.
I get you 100%. And that's one thing where you hear a lot of these fighters. Like I remember John Jones before his last fight. He said, "I want to strike with Cyril, but if the wrestling presents itself, I have to take it." And that's kind of what you're
Yeah,
saying is you have this advantage, so you can't just not use it. It would be stupid
yeah.
not to.
Like I see some of the top fighters, like they're originally wrestling and great at wrestling, and you see them like banging away, and their pay is a lot different than mine. So I guess it's like, all right, I'm gonna give you a great show, bang away. But I'm like, why? You can literally take them down and do the same thing. Your ground and pound game is probably a lot better than mine, or however. But yeah, just stand up, just throwing for the fences. I'm not gonna give you that. I'm not gonna take a 80-20 situation and make it a 50-50 or thing 60-40 out of my favor. So yeah.
Yeah, I get you. And that's one thing. It's a tale as old as time in the UFC specifically is you get these guys who are wrestlers and then they fall in love with that striking, that right hand. Michael Chandler, Chad Mendez, all these guys. So I love your approach that if it's there, I'm going to use it. So I really respect that. Your fight on the Contender Series, along with your debut in the UFC, have been at heavyweight. But before that, you were fighting at 205 pounds. Do you think you're going to stay at heavyweight? This fight's obviously there, or do you plan on going back down to 205?
Now, dealing with the PI and stuff, I'm not going back down. We're gonna settle in here. I have my nutritionist, Glenn, and I have a strength and condition with Becky at the UFC PI, and we're gonna settle into this weight class and do what we gotta do. I tell them, like, I'm the machine, the program, you plug it in, program it how you need to. Even like today, I text Becky, I was like, hey, I got we have the fight coming up, and I also talked to Glenn yesterday. I was like, hey, we got this fight coming up. They was like, okay, let's work on this for nutrition. And then she sent me workouts for today. So I, did a workout today and different things because she has me doing like pre-fight week workouts and stuff like that. So since it was short notice, she's like trying to like get certain things with the body activated and stuff. So yeah, so they have a system that they're working. I just show up, do it, or they send it to me and I do it, and yeah, be the
That,
machine they make.
yes, sir. That's all you can be. So you
Yeah,
train at ATT in Atlanta, and there are a lot of great fighters there. Obviously, Chris Barnett, you were talking about. I was talking to Trayshawn Gore earlier this week.
yeah.
So you guys got a lot of monsters down there, but Extreme Couture has had just such a rise up these last couple of years, especially in the heavier weight divisions. How much do you think it helped you going out there before your last fight and getting to train with those guys? Francis trains there, Sean Strickland, Chris Curtis, all those guys.
Um, Timothy Johnson. They have a new guy, Josh Hokett, coming in. He should be making his MMA debut coming up soon. That helped tremendously. That made me comfortable in the weight class. Even in Ghana with the situation, I think it was like not too long after he left the UFC when he came back to the gym, and he was in there helping me train. He was actually going back to Africa, to his country, Cameroon, to do something. He stayed the day, like he's supposed to leave like on Wednesday. He stayed that day. He was like, "Hey, aren't you fighting?" He thought I was fighting that weekend, so he's like, "Aren't you fighting?" I was like, "No, I fight next weekend." He was like, "Okay." He had his clothes on, fresh, heavyweight champion of the world, scariest man. He had his stuff on, ready to leave, and he asked me, and he was like, "You know what? He's like, I'm gonna stay and train with you. Help you train because the last week, if it's fight week, you're not doing too much. So then it's like no need to come." But he was like, "No, I'm gonna stay because you fight next year. I'm gonna stay for your last hard practice and give you a good round." And I was only doing 3 hard rounds. I did 2 with Tim Johnson, and I did 1 with him. We finished the 3 rounds, and everybody's going. He knows I'm doing 3 rounds. He's like, "Hey, come on, get on top, work your grappling on me." And he was like giving me work, but he was like, "No, just stay on top. If he get out the position, he'll go right back down the bottom." But being able to work with him and practices when how practices went, and even with Tim Johnson and Josh, like that builds your confidence. Like, who's gonna hit you harder than Francis?
Yeah,
You
I
know,
mean, I don't
Tim is
think
like
really anybody
280.
can.
Yeah, and I took some hits from him. I took some hits from him. So it's like when you go through that fire, and that's the thing with Extreme, like they, especially for me with the, heavyweight, they're there. We have some heavyweights too, but 'cause we have some heavyweights, like, they, especially for me with the heavyweight, they're there. We have some heavyweights too, but 'cause 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 we have some heavyweights too, but ' the schedules don't match, especially in Georgia, for how we work. Because even for myself in Georgia, I'm not there all the time because I train Monday through Wednesday, and I have to come back to South Carolina. So a lot of the guys were commuting from so far, so in Atlanta, but at Extreme, like everybody is right there. They live right there by the gym. They're coming there every day. So the consistency was a little bit better. And even for myself, it made it a lot easier because now I'm consistent with the Monday through Thursday, Friday, Saturday, different situations. So it helped tremendously.
Yeah, 100%, man.
Yeah.
So you're coming off two straight wins and a much longer winning streak pre-UFC. I assume I'm not an odds maker, but I assume you're going to be a favorite in this fight just based off your recent performances. So everything goes to plan. Sold out Miami-Dade Arena. Karl Williams goes out there, puts on another dominant performance over Chase Sherman. Who are you going to call out on that mic? Who do you want next?
I don't know. I honestly, and I know this is not what people want to hear, but I just want to be active. So whoever's up next, they have that Charlotte, North Carolina card. Everything goes well, no injuries and stuff. I would like to be on that Charlotte card. So it's who's available, because I wouldn't want to call out somebody. Now they're like looking for me to fight them, and then it's like, oh well, this person just fought also, but they need 6-7 weeks to heal, or like 3 months to heal. And now I'm sitting there waiting for somebody. And I don't have no gripes with nobody. And I don't think I'm that much great at anybody to be like, oh, let me take this person. Like just give me a person. Even like Sherman, I saw like one or two of his fights just to help Chris, but I wasn't like focusing on it to like, oh, I might have to fight this guy. I didn't even pay any attention to him. As far as like, I don't pay attention to too many. You see the top people fight. I love watching UFC. So you see the top guys, but there's nobody where I'm like, oh, I want this person. I think like I look sometimes like, oh, it would be interesting to see my skill level and in the moment what I do against certain people at the top. But right now I'm making my way up, so I don't even know the full roster. So to
I
see, like,
get you.
I'm not, yeah, and you're not gonna get. I don't even know if Chris is actually ranked. So I don't know, like he might be ranked 20 or 18th or something. I don't even know. Or he might be 30 or 40 and I might be at like 50. So I don't know how the jumps and the behind the scenes work. That's why I just focus on just being active, and what will come will come.
I get you, man. So you were talking earlier about your nutritionist and the people at the PI. Now that you've made this permanent move to heavyweight, are you planning as you climb up the ranks to where these bigger guys are all on top of the division? Do you plan on staying around the same size you are now, which you have the great cardio and all that? Or would you prefer over the next couple of years as you make this climb to put on some more size so you're coming in around 260, 265 like some of these top guys?
No, if I come in at 265, I'm gonna be walking around at 280. I'm gonna look terrible. That's what got me into MMA, so I don't want to go back up that bad. I'll probably stick, if I can, I'll probably stay around like 250, 247, because I was at 250. I'll go up to 250, but once I'm in camp and actually training, my body drops. That's what kept me away from heavyweight, because once I start training the amount that I train, I don't especially with how much deal with the PI again, how much calories I need to intake, how much I burn and stuff. By the time I used to do camp, I wasn't eating enough, so I'll get down to like 220. So I'm not gonna go and jump to heavyweight. That's like 40 some pounds, especially if they cut now. That's 60 pounds that you're giving up. So that's what kept me at 205, because I made my debut at heavyweight, because I was the only person. Philpott, my pro debut, he was the only person that would fight me, and it was a heavyweight, so but I didn't like giving up so much weight. So now if I can, I'll probably get like 250, 255 walking around weight. That's with regular, just day-to-day practicing, not being super, super strict on my diet. Because once I get strict on my diet, I know I'll probably get down to 247. Because most of my camp I was at 247. Then the last week it dropped down to 238, 240. I was drinking water before the weigh-in to get to 0.5. I weighed in on the test scale. I weighed on the test scale. It was like 240. And I was like, man, let me drink some water. At least I get 241. It was like 0.5. I was like, man, I can't drink. I'm not going to go like overload myself with water for this. But yeah. So
And
No.
you hear a lot of people talk about it. Have you noticed a lot of progress in your own skills now that you're not making that cut anymore?
Oh yes. And you're more focused, so you can like literally just like I said with the PI, and I can't. I would always stress them, but with them you can just build and be the best physical you. You know, if I need to gain, let's say 10 more pounds of muscle, they'll know how to put it on. You know, so you don't have to like if I had to cut weight, I'd have to. That's why I didn't go back to 205 because I'd have to lose so much lean muscle. I had almost 200 almost like 190 something, close to 200 pounds of lean body mass. That's just muscle. You know, then you have your bone density and all that stuff. So by the time I have to like literally cut all the body fat out of me to make it to 205 and keep what I gained. So you have to lose so much gains just to get to 205. So yeah, wouldn't want to do that.
I get you, man. You see some of these fighters have their hardest fights on the scale. Like you see the main event this upcoming weekend, Alex Pereira. You wonder, how does this man cut all this size? Like, I think it kind of blows all of our minds because he goes in
Yeah.
there. He doesn't look horrible when he gets on the scale. Like, he looks a little sunken out, but he's not having to be carried up there like some of the guys in the old days. And then he walks into the octagon at 215, 220, and you're like, how does he pull this all out of him? But hey, it is what it
Yeah.
is. If you can do it, do it. But it's certainly, I don't know how he does it.
Yeah, my last two fights, I had to cut 20 pounds. If you look at my weigh-ins, like my face is all sunken in. My skin is even darker. It was just like it takes a toll on you. And the one, luckily, I was able to win those. But the one fight, I know the opponent he was getting mad. I was just grabbing him, but I could not. Like my hands locked up like this. So I could hold you because my hands was like in this position, but to strike it was like taking so much out of me just to like stretch my hand out. So I was like, look, muster up enough strength, punch, 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 then grab. But it was all because of the weight cut. Like if I was fresh, I could, move how I want to, but I was so drained. I was like, look, just make it through it. Like it was a completely bad situation. Last minute fight too. Like I got the fight on Wednesday, had to fly up to Richmond, had to cut like 20 pounds. None of my coaches could make it because it was so last minute. And we had other fighters fighting. So they ended up having to go because once I canceled my original fight, I was still looking for a fight. So, but it was gonna be at heavyweight or like a catch, it was gonna be at a catch weight. And that fight got canceled. And then I just picked this one. It was like 205. I'm like, okay. So I had to cut so much weight by myself. And it was, man, the fight game, all the stories, but yes, I don't see how they do it. Like, but they have a system, and Alex has been, fighting for so long, and he's a veteran in the martial arts game. So he has a system that works, and that's a lot of thing I think with a lot of these guys. Even back in the day, talking to some like the veteran coaches that I have, that the process wasn't figured out. They didn't know about like water loading and putting salt on this time and loading up on salt at certain times and eating and cutting out certain things. So those were harder, but now you have so much science behind it that I guess he knew somebody who has the science and he makes it, but power to him.
Yeah, man, I'm with you. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Carl. It's been awesome. I'm really rooting for you to get the W this weekend. I truly believe you will. One last question before you go is big main event this weekend. It's obviously their fourth fight, their second fight in MMA. Who you picking in the quadrilogy, man? Izzy or Alex Pereira?
I don't want to because I don't like to, but I'm gonna just say Pereira just to throw something out there because I know people don't pick one. But I Easy was winning the fight, so that's why it's like, how do you pick? Because you pick Pereira just because of the record, but if you pick off of the rounds and different stuff, and Easy could have took him. I don't know why he don't. I don't know why. Like same thing with the wrestling. Like he had him on the underhooks up against the cage. All you have to do is drop down to the legs and like scoop them. But it's always from the outside looking in, and that's why I don't like doing it because from the outside looking in, it's always like, well, you could have just did this. But if he did that and Pereira like catches him with a knee, catches him with that, but and what you're comfortable and what you're feeling, because like you said, if he's at 215 coming in, I know I'm at like 190. I mean, yeah, like 190, 200, and you can feel that physical difference. Like man, I'm gonna just hold him up against the cage because I know how much strength I'm gonna take to take him down. So we're gonna have to see. I'll pick Alex just to throw something out there. But I think it's gonna be a 50-50 match again.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm very torn on it. I favor Alex only
See, okay,
because
good.
I watched the last fight and I see a guy who's so green to MMA. And if you I've rewatched the fight, I think 2 or 3 times now. And like in the third round,
See.
when he was on bottom, Alex got there because he tried a trip attempt. And in the first round, I think he was winning until that last 5 seconds when he put his hands down. So I think really that first fight, Izzy was up 3-1, but all of those rounds were pretty close with the exception of round 3. So the way I see it, Alex was so green, and I don't think he'll make those mistakes this time. So I'm favoring him to get it done as well, but it's going to be a great card. We have that awesome main event. We have Jorge Masvidal versus Gilbert Durinho Burns, Adrian Yanez versus
That's
Rob Font, your man Chris Curtis from Extreme Couture going up against Kelvin
yep.
Gastelum, you versus Chase Sherman. So some awesome fights. Thank you so much for coming on, Carl. It was an honor talking with you, and I look forward to seeing you
Thank
get that
you.
win, man.
Honor. Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Pleasure being on there.